We have only one Earth, our living planet, that helps sustain life. We are warned, this life system is in crisis. Fresh water, clean air, good soil, the things we need to stay alive are being destroyed. Sustaining the environment is something we all have a vested interest in. After all, who wants to pollute the water or the land? Everything that you and I use comes from the land. Food is grown or raised on land. It also provides the materials used in everything, ranging from cars and tools to clothing and silverware. Property is also essential for a family to build their home. Sustaining our environment has led us down the road to a movement known as environmentalism. Yet, a strange thing happened. Environmentalism came to a fork in the road, and while the rhetoric took one route, the agenda took another. America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. This great land was founded on individualism. We as citizens have God-given rights. We even passed the Bill of Rights to protect them. Since the beginning, our forefathers understood that people were endowed with the right to property. They state, "Private property and freedom are inseparable. Property must be secure or liberty cannot exist." Our forefathers knew the dangers of big government and how it can threaten the rights of the people. They overthrew a government that told people what to do in critical aspects of their lives. For the first time in history, a document was created that protected the rights of citizens through limited government. We as Americans have the God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For generations, Americans have fought to protect our great land and freedom. Today, the fight not only continues, but expands to many areas, including our environment. As good stewards of Earth, Americans are traveling on the road to environmentalism. Recycling has been a common practice for most of human history. One of the first big pushes occurred in the 1970s through government mandates. As time passed, environmental protection went from a local phenomenon to a worldwide movement. Saving planet Earth became a common goal. This goal took shape through the United Nations. Beginning in 1983, the United Nations asked the World Commission on Environment and Development, also called the Brundtland Commission, to propose long-term strategies for achieving sustainable development by the year 2000 and beyond. By 1987, in the name of preserving the food supply and clean water, sustainable development was introduced. Director General of the World Health Organization and Vice President of Socialist Internationale, Gro Harlem Brundtland, led a commission that released a report called Our Common Future. In it, they defined sustainable development as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It sounds like something we can all support. After all, who doesn't want to preserve the land for future generations so they can have clean water and plant and reap their harvests? As sustainable development took shape, other issues within the UN progressed. In 1992, an Earth Summit was convened under the auspices of the UN to formulate policy for the world environmental movement. At the summit, they issued a report entitled Agenda 21. The number 21 stands for the 21st century. In his opening speech, the General Secretary of the summit, Maurice Strong, who is also a member of the Brundtland Commission, said, "Current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class, involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, home and work air conditioning, and suburban housing, are not sustainable." It sounds as if sustainable development is taking on an agenda that can possibly curtail one's eating habits, the ability to drive using any type of vehicle, and even limiting one's ability to own a home in the suburbs. What are their true intentions? At the conclusion of the Earth Summit, in the euphoria of the moment, Agenda 21 was signed by 178 world leaders, including President George H.W. Bush. Since then, subsequent events have led American leaders, including Presidents Clinton and Obama, to sign further agreements and executive orders implementing Agenda 21. Environmental activist and attorney Daniel Sittars states, Agenda 21 proposes an array of actions which are intended to be implemented by every person on Earth. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. A major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This kind of government control may sound inconceivable for a country like America, but in June of 1993, President Clinton issued Executive Order 12852 to create the President's Council on Sustainable Development. The purpose of the PCSD was to translate the recommendations set forth in Agenda 21 into public policy administered by the federal government. Now this begs the question, what UN mandates are being funneled through the federal government to our local communities? So now, let's see how Agenda 21 is affecting the United States Bill of Rights and Constitution. In the UN's 1996 publication, Global Biodiversity Assessment, it states, property rights are not absolute and unchanging, but rather a complex, dynamic, and shifting relationship between two or more parties over space and time. Agenda 21's view toward private property can be traced back to the 1976 UN Conference on Human Settlement. In their Report of Habitat, the private ownership of land section reads, land, because of its unique nature and the crucial role it plays in human settlements, cannot be treated as an ordinary asset, controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private ownership is also a principal instrument of the accumulation and concentration of wealth, and therefore contributes to social injustice. If unchecked, it may become a major obstacle in the planning and implementation of development schemes. This is contrary to the views of George Washington, John Adams, and the other founders of the United States. Agenda 21's view on private property is comparable to that of the Soviet Union, where private ownership was replaced with collective ownership. To explain, let's look at the first actions taken by Vladimir Lenin and his Bolshevik government. Following the October Revolution of 1917, Agrarian land reforms did away with the people's private ownership of farms. The farms were seized and converted into government-mandated collective farms. On these collective farms, the ruling Soviet government determined production quotas which are similar to what is being recommended by the PCSD to bring the rates of harvest into line. With the guidance of UN affiliates, sustainable development programs have found their way into local communities. A good example took place in Contra Costa County, California in 2011. At a meeting to explain sustainable development, the following took place between the organizers and the citizens. An attendee did not understand what was meant by preserving open space.
So open space is sort of defined as anything that does not currently have development on it. So it would be defined as agricultural areas or natural areas that don't have urban development on them, either industrial, commercial, or housing.
Are you talking about government open space, or are you talking about private open space? People's private property, like eminent domain?
It's both.
Both? After much confusion from the citizens, a woman stated,
Private property is part of that's part of our constitutional values for people to have and be able to do whatever they want with their own private property. And for us to sit here and say they can't use their own property and you're calling it open space is somebody's private property.
these types of meetings lead to more questions than answers. What are the true intentions of sustainable development? Private property rights are only one aspect of sustainable development. It affects an even more fundamental aspect of life, life itself.